My name is Francisco Ibáñez, and I work at the EIT. It's the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And our mission is to foster digital innovation and entrepreneurial talent in Europe. At EIT, we believe that entrepreneurial talent exists not only at startups, but also in research centers, universities, and in large corporates. And our mission is to try to bridge the gap between those three organizations to ensure that there's technology transfer and there's a symbiosis between all these three organizations. And we're going to spend the next half hour talking about how to bridge that gap between large corporates, entrepreneurs, and universities and research centers with the help of three entrepreneurs. I have with me Carlos Moure. He's the founder of Kairós Digital Solutions. It's a boutique company, it's a boutique consulting company focusing on digital governance with a specialization or a focus on change management, agile business, and digital processes. With us as well is David Moreno. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he's the CEO of Coowry. Coowry is a mobile payment startup which uses airtime as a currency. And finally, Juan Caballero. Juan is the assistant research professor of the IMDEA Software Institute, and he specializes in cybersecurity. Anyway, since EIT is pretty new in Spain, hardly anybody knows us, I'm going to spend 5 minutes talking about what we do. And that'll serve as an introduction for our discussion. As I said, the EIT is a European organization founded by the European Parliament. And as I said, our focus is to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. For some reason in Europe, there are great research centers, there are very talented people, and there are very dynamic companies. But in too many cases, we're unable to get products to market or services to market. And our focus is to try to ensure that Europe becomes much more competitive in that sense. We invest, and I will now go to the presentation, which I should have done before. We invest in 8 strategic areas. These are areas where we think Europe has a competitive advantage, or that have been defined as strategic areas in which to invest. For example, Future Cloud. Our focus here is to come up with a European solution for cloud storage, for data, and for content. We all depend on the American companies, the Amazon Web Services, and the idea is to come up with a European solution for that. Okay? In addition to Future Cloud, we invest in other areas like smart cities, cyber-physical systems, which are 3D printing, aggregate manufacturing, and others. At EIT, we bring together over 130 large corporates, universities, research centers, and entrepreneurs. And we organize ourselves around knowledge innovation centers. And as I said before, the idea is to bridge the gap between these three organizations by promoting joint programs, investing in creating technology transfer or promoting technology transfer, etc. We are a pan-European organization. We are present in 10 countries, and we organize our activities around what we call co-location centers. These are just a couple of examples of our co-location centers in Helsinki and in Madrid. And finally, to summarize this, this is what we offer and what we do in 3 words. On the one hand, for entrepreneurs, we focus on scale-ups, companies that have shown that they have a traction in their market and are ready to grow in Europe through our acceleration program. We have corporate partners, and what we do with them is to try to promote go-to-market strategies through technology transfer and through participating in joint programs. And also we provide for them qualified deal flows through our acceleration program. And finally, we have a master's and a doctoral program where we take students who are doing technical studies, computer science, information technology, telecommunications, and we provide for them an incentive to take, on the one hand, entrepreneurial and innovation courses within our program, and to spend 1 year in their doctoral program, for example, studying in one of the universities that form part of our organization. In any case, that was not the point of the discussion today, but I did want to at least explain who we are And hopefully, if you have more information, we're just down the hall, and we'll welcome anybody who's an entrepreneur or who's interested in research and innovation. Okay, now for the matter at hand. As I said before, we've invited 3 entrepreneurs who will help us understand how best to bridge the gap that exists right now in Europe between large corporates, entrepreneurs, and universities and research centers. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each one of you a question based on who you are and what you do. As I mentioned before, Carlos Moure is a founder of Kairós Digital Solutions, and he defines what he does as we help large companies work like startups, and we help startups work with large companies. So I wanted to ask you, Carlos, the first question. In your opinion, are most companies able to successfully take their products from lab to market? And if they're not, what are they doing wrong, and how can we help them do it better?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Paco. It's a very, very good question and a hard question, because normally the incumbents and great companies, they need to challenge a very big, important problem. Why? Because if you are in the first stage, you are in the lab, you are a colonizer. Normally you have a product that you have very important technical attributes of the product. Normally you need to test and you need to fail fast and cheap. Normally you have skills, attitudes, culture that is completely different, that you need to go to the second stage. You need to go to a consolidation market. No? What happened in the first stage, you need to set early adopters, and in the second stage you need to set mass average clients. So what do you need? In the second stage, you need scale economy, distribution channels. You need, for example, you need to set which is going to be your mass average client. You need to define your product attitudes and features, not your technical products. In the first stage, normally you're an engineer. In the second, you're a business manager. So what happened? That you can be a consolidator and discover business model in the same company. It's impossible that a company has this kind of skills in the same culture of a company. If you want to discover a new business model, a new innovation, it's very difficult that you scale this product. So you need to set alliance, and you need to send something like open innovation, that I think that we are going to talk about this in the next step.
Thank you, Carlos. So in essence, obviously they have to work as entrepreneurs with the MVP, failure phase, scale up, etc. And usually that is not something that they do on their own. And you think that bringing talent from outside, people who have been entrepreneurs, helps them understand that? Are they receptive to that kind of change in the organization, in the culture? Or is it something that we still have some work to do with them for them to really have that mindset?
For example, normally open innovation is that if you go on to outsourcing colonization models, so you need to recognize that in your company you can innovate in a radical new way. So what are you doing? You try to get this innovation and this business model outside the company. For example, Procter & Gamble in 23, Jeff Laffey, they decide we need to get 50% of the sales the next year is outside the company. So it's a very hard decision for a company to know or to recognize that you can't, or it's impossible for you to get innovation inside the company. So you need to get alliance with the startups or with small companies, because you need to get outside this innovation to get inside the company. And then you are very good in a scaling way. So in the second phase, what you are going to do is to try to help or to work with the startups to get a mass market and to get a scaling market to get the next phase of the company. No?
Okay, I'd like maybe Juan and David to discuss this. We were talking about open innovation. What are your views? I mean, David is an entrepreneur. He's also been in the larger corporate world. What is still missing, and what are your views on how we can improve that?
Well, I think regarding open innovation, I think it's a must right now. I mean, everyone understands that to cope with the fast pace of changing things, with products that are short life, the cycle is shorter, they really need to go outside to find solutions for that. I mean, that's kind of clear. The problem is how do you get that? How do you find that? And actually, how do you incorporate in the company? And actually, open innovation, I think, is not only just about finding outside of your company, it's also about what you have inside. And actually, there is quite a lot of evidence right now that if you don't have good research inside, if you don't have knowledge in the company, open innovation or just looking for something outside is really difficult to achieve. In fact, I mean, those companies that are most successful finding good things to bring to the company are those that have already invested a lot on research. You have a lot of knowledge in the company. That's the way you actually move it, no? But then there is the problem actually of these companies, how they incorporate and how they assimilate those. I mean, you are able to identify, then to assimilate is the difficult thing. Many times what they do is just they try to, I don't know, get so much into that at the end they don't allow them to actually grow. That's the biggest problem, I think. I think is how they incorporate that in the company. No?
Okay, Juan, what are your views on that, and maybe in particular thinking about the idea of intellectual property, things that are not invented here, or bringing in solutions from the outside? What are your views? You're in a research institute. How do you see the relationship with that, bringing in that innovation from the outside? Is it always that easy? What do companies need to do?
Well, I guess, okay, I'm the technical guy, I guess, here. So from our point of view, is a lot of the times is having the technology, having been working on the technology for some time, actually like reaching out to the people that actually may be interested in the technology, right? And I come from from studying in the US, and I see there like a lot of companies directly going to the universities and seeing what is actually being developed by the large groups there. And here I think there's more mixture, right? We have, I mean, people like Carlos try to do that bridging, right? And identify maybe what are the technologies, what are the big players are actually finding. So for me at this moment, I mean, there's different models, and I mean, I think that's the problem here for the researchers or maybe for the innovators that have the technology is try to understand exactly which of these may be the easier way maybe to go to market, right?
Okay.
Having said that, I mean, there's a difference between the States and over here in Europe. However, I mean, I think there is a lack of incentives, actually, when you say, well, how do you bring from lab to market, or how do you transfer the knowledge, the talent? Well, there is a lack of incentive actually here, at least in Spain, for the universities to actually go into the market. I mean, the professors don't have really a need to do that. I mean, it's not value in their curriculum. It's a risk for them because they might have to leave the company, the teaching area. So I think that's a big problem here. I mean, there's no communication, and actually there's no real incentive to increase that communication. There's no real incentive for a professor to actually go into the market, because there's not going to be a clear winning for him. So
that's interesting, and that's one of the things. Yes, Juan, I'll give you the word in a second. That's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, because in Coowry was created through joining forces with people from universities, a university professor, and people who come from the market, from large corporations, and they got together and created Coowry. And it seems like an easy and a logical match, but even if the idea is good and the will is there, the road is not that easy to travel necessarily, because some of the roadblocks that you have in regulations here in Spain on how a professor, if a professor can enter a company or not, or when.
Yes, when we started Coowry, I mean, university for us was crucial. I mean, we knew we have very good students. We know we have a very good academia. I mean, people are really good at the university. They are also, compared to other countries, less expensive in the sense. I mean, they are more efficient for the company, and you have a lot of talent there. The difficult thing here is how do you bring that talent into your company, and that is really a nightmare. It's really a nightmare right now. It is not even clear in the university how you have to do that. I mean, the technology transfer, and the UPM, the Polytechnic of Spain, Madrid, must be one of the best, because they have a lot of elements already in place, but it's scattered in different places right now, so you don't really know where to have to talk to. So when we try to incorporate this person, a professor from the university, into the company, it wasn't an easy process at all. At the end, in fact, he has taken a risk, a big risk, because he has actually left the university to join the company. I mean, to say that to a professor in Spain, that you are going to have to leave your company, your academia, where you live comfortable, where you are doing what you want to do, and go into the private company when there is a lot of risk, especially in a startup where your future is very much uncertain, is really, really difficult. And there is no way to do that. I mean, actually, he had to just say, okay, I'll leave and I'll take this risk. But very few will do that. So there's still a lot of things to do there. We've been lucky with that. We've been lucky also, and we are very proud of working with the university because we've been able to incorporate the students from the university. They are doing their practicums, they are doing their projects with us, and that's helped us a lot. Also with people from India. We've brought people from India into our company. So we've been quite lucky, but we need to be very, very smart in a way to actually bring them in the company because there are no easy ways to do it.
Juan, you wanted to mention something on this subject.
Right. So maybe I'm not so negative as David on like the incentives for like university and researchers to actually create startups. First of all, I don't work for university. I work in a research lab that is called India Software Institute, and we do have incentives for this. But I also think generally, I mean, the incentives are the same everywhere, right? It's like sometimes you have the technology, you want to make an impact with that technology, and if you can actually profit from that, that's also an incentive, right? So I think the incentives are there. It's just like finding the right people with the right technology that fits your needs, maybe.
Okay, Juan, you started talking about this earlier, and we've discussed this before. In your experience, you've seen that technology that comes out of research centers, for example, in the United States, in the area of cybersecurity, where you specialize, it's very normal to see spin-offs of the research done in those places to become successful startups. EIT, one of the missions of EIT, as I mentioned before, is to kind of emulate that model, is to bring that entrepreneurial spirit into research centers, also entrepreneurs, obviously, and large corporates. The way we approach it sometimes here is more as a large multi-country corporation. In your experience, are we doing it with the right approach, or at least the right idea, and maybe with an approach that needs to be modified? Will we get to the point where we're as dynamic as in the United States?
Well, that's a lot of questions, I guess. Right, so I work in cybersecurity. It's been a hot topic in recent years. So I've seen like large research groups, mostly in the US, creating like successful startups. There's Dambala from Georgia Tech. There is Lastline from University of California, Santa Barbara. My group in Berkeley actually sold technology to Farai, which is one of the large players too. So there's a lot there. So here what I'm seeing is like, I think the models are, sometimes there is more than one model. So for example, in EIT Digital, like coming like from the technical side, I see two different models, right? So we see the startups like Coowry and all the like the business coaching and all like the help provided to the startups. That's one model. And then we see other like projects, like one that I'm actually involved in, which is a technology transfer for an anomaly detection, basically for cyber security threats on the network. And there is a consortium of 3 European companies, okay, that basically try to bridge the gap from like a technology or some early prototype that we already have into like market, right? And I mean, there you see the differences, right? I guess from my point of view, the smaller number of parties involved makes it easier, right? So when you already have 3 parties in 3 different countries, just getting like a consortium agreement or an exploitation agreement in place, it turns out to be like a really big mess. So I think in that sense, the model I've seen in the US is a bit more agile with that, but I think that model exists exactly here, like with all the startups and that.
Good, good. One of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that we do at EIT, we have an acceleration program for startups. In those cases, some of those startups have a great idea, but they still don't know how to take it to market, how to convert it into a viable product. Carlos helps us with that, and I'd like to get your thoughts on how you help these startups come, as we were saying here, from idea to product. I have this wonderful product idea. It works. It solves a problem that I think it's important, but I can't get it to market. How do you work with startups to get them to use their technology for large corporates or to grow by finding clients?
Okay. Normal here, you need to see 3 things. The first is that you need to go to early adopter to a mass market. So you need to define which is your attribute of the product in a business way. You don't need to define your product at, for example, velocity or other size or something like this. What you need to define now is a business model or a product in a business way, no? You need to know that your client needs to trust in you because you are going to work with a very large company. So you need to build on a brand and a communication way because you need to reduce the risks of your client. It's very important this point because for a client to work with a startup is normally is difficult or is a risk for them. So you need to reduce this. And you need to get alliance with, for example, complementary goods or something like this. But you need to set a group of partners that they are going to help you to go or to work with the large companies, no? But it's very important to know that when a company or a large company work with a startup, it's very difficult for them because they need to understand which is going to be the most important way that the product or the value that the product is going to give them, no? But I think that with a business model approach, mass market or mass average customers, scaling, and then you to get alliance and partnership, no? I think that is a good way.
Okay. David, you're in that phase right now. You have a wonderful product. It's working, and you're in that phase now that you're looking for large corporate partners to help you scale, to implement. What is your experience as Carlos was mentioning, that selling to a large corporate as a startup is difficult? And what differences maybe have you seen in doing it maybe in a more local market and going to international markets, which is where you guys are? Because Coowry is developing their business in Asia right now, and they're doing quite well, and that was their initial target. But why don't we get your thoughts on that?
Okay, I think what Carlos said about the business model is really important. You really need to prove the value proposition, and there is a real value for them in this stage. The way you approach to them is a bit different in both areas. Like in Asia, where we are really now operating, what we did before is identify which countries, which markets we are more valuable for, and how we can provide that value to the telcos, and we focus a lot on that. I mean, so we went with a value proposition that is very well matched for those large corporations, and those corporations are actually looking for these kind of solutions. I mean, so they are very open-minded in that respect. So in that sense, it was much easier over there than in a country like here where our solution doesn't see the value that much. So that's what we did.
Okay. One thing that I was earlier in the discussion, I think it was with Hyperloop. In the presentation, compare two slides with ¿Cuánto es poco? Vale, perfecto. 5 more minutes. He compared two slides where he showed a series of American companies that he said had failed and a series of American companies that had been successful. Large corporates with brands that we know like Kodak and Coca-Cola. And one of the big differences that, or what he thought is the main differentiation between one group and another is what he defined as outsourcing talent or crowdsourcing talent. One of the things that we're trying to do here, obviously, is to bridge that gap between large corporates, entrepreneurs, research centers. Are we taking the right steps to really have that openness to bring in talent and technology? And if so, what other things can we do from your perspective, for example, with corporates? Because a lot of corporates right now are starting to develop their own labs where they bring in accelerator programs. They bring in companies that maybe will fit their purpose. But are they doing that in the right way? Or are they still looking at a very proprietary, this is a technology just for me, I want to use it?
Well, I think on theory, when you look at the solutions, on theory, you find that they're right. I mean, it's like when we are building this, we are making communication easier, we are giving access to the startups, to the places. So when you look at it, it says, it should work. It should work. I mean, there seems to be all the elements in place. The problem is that it doesn't really work, no? I think it's a matter of incentives there. I think there is a problem with the way actually the large companies want to gather this knowledge, and keep it for themselves. And you can see that in many of these accelerators built by large corporations, then all the commercialization is on their side. There's a lot of constraints there that really constrain the development of the startup. The startup has a much wider view on that sense. So on theory, it looks all fine, but there are certain elements there that can be changed. I mean, to really build that flow that works.
Yeah, and
Un minuto. Vale. Yeah. Our time is up. I'm sorry we haven't got a chance to listen to Carlos and Juan on this last topic, but I want to thank you for your time, and I'd like everybody to give a nice round of applause for the presenters.